Do you know whose residence this was?
Yes, ma'am.
Whose residence?
Frankie Gebhardt.
Okay. And I'm going to show you what's been marked and provided to the defense in discovery as State's Exhibits 45 through 72. I'm going to ask you if you recognize those.
Your Honor, if I could, we were provided over 400 photographs. I'd like to see the ones that actually are being shown right now, just to make sure.
My apologies. I thought there were no objections to any photographs. I'm sorry. I would have shown them to you. That was my understanding.
Middle microphone.
All right, I'm going to show you again what's been marked as State's Exhibit 45 through 72. I'm going to ask you if you recognize those.
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you recognize them?
I took them.
Okay, so they are fair and accurate depictions of what you saw back on May 10th of 2017 at the defendant's residence.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time I will tender State's Exhibit 45 through 72.
They're admitted.
Permission to publish.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Agent Fred, let's just, if you would, may she step down, Judge?
Yes.
Walk the
Just
jury.
speak up loud enough for the court reporter.
Yes, ma'am.
If you would, Agent, walk the jury here through your process. You said you photograph everything. What were you photographing here?
Here's the front of the residence. Generally, we want to get an idea of the entire surroundings, so we generally walk the entire scene first and gather photographs from every angle.
And is that what you did in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And as counsel for the defendant noted, there were over 400 photos taken in this case. Is that right?
Probably.
Okay. We don't have 400 photos here today, so we've pared them down. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 47. What is the jury looking at here?
A red truck that was parked there at the residence when we got there. Also, this is just the surrounding kind of in the backyard area
Okay. In the backyard area of where?
of the residence.
The defendant's residence?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that located in Spalding County?
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibit 48. What were you looking for there? Why did you take that photo?
I was brought to this truck, somebody just looking through the window. Obviously, it's on the property right next to the house. Somebody had seen a pocket knife inside of the vehicle, so they had asked me to collect it.
Did you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And we'll get to the evidence that you collected in just a moment. But can you speak to the jury for me about the collection of evidence, how you collect evidence in your training?
Yes, ma'am. Generally, we'll photograph the item first. We want to make sure, again, it's the same reason. We want to make sure that people can see exactly what it looks like before we touched it. Of course, we want to use gloves to make sure that we don't contaminate the item of evidence. And depending on what type of object it is that we're collecting, depends on what type of technique you use to collect it. So for a knife, for instance, we're going to want to put it in a knife box. That's really just so that nobody gets cut or hurt afterwards.
Is it fair to say that crime scene investigative techniques have come a long way in the last 30 plus years?
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
And in today's field of crime scene investigations, is there a dedicated unit?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're part of that unit?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know if 30 plus years ago there were these units of crime scene investigations?
I'm not sure that there was.
Okay. State's Exhibit 49. What were you looking for here?
This is the rear of the residence, which is where we made entry. This door right here that you can see. There is actually an awning over here. I think there's a picture of that. Kind of like a shed. There's a hot tub on the left-hand side.
State's Exhibit 50.
So this is the awning over here. But this is, again, right in the rear of the residence, right by that back door.
Okay. You said you made entry in the back of the residence. Can you describe the residence for the jury?
It's a single-story home. It was blue in color. Walking in, you kind of had, there was an add-on area to the back of the house, which is actually where that door where you come into. And there was carpeting, and underneath that carpeting was a brick slab, or not a brick, a concrete slab that they had covered over and kind of created an extra living space. You walk into the kitchen area, which is to the left.
Okay. And you stated earlier to the jury that you were looking for knives. Did you recover knives in the home?
We absolutely did, yes ma'am.
Do you recall about how many?
We had one box of 60 knives that we collected just from one drawer in the kitchen hutch. This one right here, this right drawer, is actually where we collected that from. There was also a knife in here. I think there actually might have been a couple knives in the hutch. This one that had a sheet, and it was held up on a stand like for a display case.
So State's Exhibit 53. Is that one of the knives that was in that display case?
Yes, ma'am.
Display case? Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibit 55.
That's after we removed it from the knife cover.
State's Exhibit 56.
It looked like a double-edged knife that folded over itself, so when you pulled it out, you ended up with two knives on either end that we also found.
State's Exhibit 57. What are we looking at here?
Tools.
I'll direct you to the
Yeah, do you have
center.
the previous photo or?
58.
Additional knives?
Okay.
Yeah.
State's Exhibit 59.
This is the drawer of knives that we found. There's different kitchen tools in there as well. We just had separated those out and collected the knives.
Okay. State's Exhibit 60. Is that one of the knives?
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibit 61.
And those are the knives that we collected for a total of 60 of them from that one drawer.
State's Exhibit 62.
That, I believe, is the knife from the truck, the red truck that was parked by the residence.
Talk to the jury, if you will, Agent, about State's Exhibit 64.
Okay. This is right next to the house, so if you're looking, the entry door, the exit, or the rear door to the residence is kind of over here. And walking next to the house, you can see this small area right here. That's actually a well, and it's a filled-in well, and you can tell that it's a well based on the concrete that they had that used to be, I'm sure, hollow, but they had a shed that covered over it, and then obviously just a bunch of different items that they had stored in the shed.
And I should have shown you this one forward first. State's Exhibit 67. It's like a wider photograph.
Right.
Where is the back door?
This is the back door. They had a fence right there next to the door as well. And then this is that same area we just talked about with the well. So it was about 3 feet away from the corner of the house.
State's Exhibit 69. What is this?
This is the well, again, just showing the items in the shed. But you can also see that this is the corner of the added-on part of the house, and how close the well was to it. It was about 3 feet.
Now, you mentioned that it was about 3 feet. Was there some discussion about trying to excavate that well?
Absolutely. We would have loved to at the time gone into the well. The only issue is that when you start digging a well for safety issues, for about every foot that you go down, you have to dig out 3 feet. So at that point, we would only get about 1 foot down into the well, and we would possibly have to destroy the entire house just to go into the well.
So at that point, what was the decision regarding the well?
The decision was not to dig the well, just due to the fact that it would have destroyed the entire house.
Was there conversation about attempting to find some alternate method?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And just to orient the jury, number 63 here, State's Exhibit 63. Where is the house in proximity to where the well is?
Here. It's going to be right here. Okay, over here in this area.
And what's the reason for the 1 foot down, 3 feet out?
It's just to make sure that things don't collapse on you if you try to go straight into the well. and walking there, you possibly are putting people at danger. So the wider it is, and then the injury can get down further.
So explain that to the jury for me. Do you mean a person actually goes in the well with a shovel and digs out, or how does that work?
Sometimes they use heavy machinery, so bobcats, and they use all types of different things. But of course, with a bobcat, they're extremely destructive to the property around it. And so in that point, yes, you could go into the well and actually, as they scoop things out, we sift through the items to make sure that we're looking for any evidence that might be in there.
Now, typically in your experience, when you've had to excavate a well, what are you looking for?
Anything that is an item of evidence for that specific case.
Okay.
So typically weapons and things like that.
All right. Is this the first time you've had a well so close to your house?
Yes.
So at this point, it sounds like to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but the well at this point was tabled that you all were going to look for alternate methods.
Right.
Okay. You do. Do you have gloves?
I think those are mine.
Those yours? You ring them. You mentioned earlier that you photographed evidence before you collected it.
Yes, ma'am.
But you did in fact collect evidence in this case.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you what is marked for identification purposes as 73. Do you recognize this?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
This is a wooden knife stand from the hutch in the kitchen.
Okay. And did you collect that yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know that?
This seal right here, it's my initials and my handwriting.
All right. And you sealed it in accordance with your training and the requirements of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this point, I will tender State's Exhibit 73.
It's admitted.
And what was this? Remind the jury from the photograph.
This was in that glass hutch, and it was the knife that was standing. This was holding the knife, the one that came from the sheath.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 75. I'll ask you if you recognize it. Obviously, we've opened it, so.
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you recognize it?
My initials once again.
Okay. And did you package it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Your Honor, I'll tender State's Exhibit 75.
No.
It's admitted.
And is that the knife that you collected from the hutch?
Yes, ma'am.
And it went with that stand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked in State's Exhibit 74. And I'll ask you if you recognize it.
Yes, ma'am.
And how do you recognize it?
My initials and my handwriting.
Okay. Did you package it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Your Honor, I'll tender State's Exhibit 74.
No objection, I guess, other than relevance. Not
Submit.
sure what all you know up to the case.
All right. We'll see. It's admitted.
Thank you, Judge. Is that the knife that you collected?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was from the truck?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll show you State's Exhibit 76. What is that?
This is a silver double-ended knife. This is also from the kitchen hutch.
We saw a photograph
Yes,
of it,
ma'am.
I believe. Okay. Did you
Yes, ma'am.
collect it?
I did.
And you know that because of your initials?
Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
Judge, I'll tender State's Exhibit 76.
Again, other than relevance, no other objection, Judge.
It's admitted.
Did you collect any firearms in the home?
I don't believe so, but honestly, I don't remember.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 77, State's Exhibit 77. Do you recognize it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What is it?
This is a box that we have to store all of the knives.
Okay. And did you collect it?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you seal it?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know that?
My initials.
Your Honor, at this point, I'll tender State's Exhibit 77.
Again, other than relevance, Your Honor, no objection.
And when you say knives, plural, how many?
60.
60? Okay, are they individually numbered or?
No, Judge.
Okay. It's admitted.
And it's fair to say that these are multiple, but they were all found in the one drawer?
Yes, ma'am.
After you collected this evidence from the home at Patterson Road, the defendant's residence, I know that you participated when the well was excavated. You took pictures.
Yes, ma'am.
But I believe you have another agent to discuss that. Is that correct?
We can. We were both there for the entire time.
Okay. Well, we can get in it with Daniela, but
Okay.
is there anything else that you did other than the crime scene work for this investigation? Thank you. I don't think anything else this time.
I was going to use the ones from the inside of the house. Are they up here? Ms. Furley, my name is Scott Johnston. I'm representing Mr. Gebhardt in this case. Just a few questions. You went through with Ms. Broder quite a few knives, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Let's start with, I guess, this one right here. Put him on the down over here. This was a knife that was inside a cupboard or a hutch, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea when that knife was manufactured?
No. I do not.
whether it was in existence in 1983 or not?
I do not.
As far as you know, was that knife ever sent anywhere for testing to see if it might have been the murder weapon?
I don't believe it was sent off, but we'd have to check the case file for the lab reports.
This knife here, the double-sided, crazy, fantasy-looking knife. As far as you know, do you have any idea when that knife was manufactured?
I do not.
Any idea if it was in existence in 1983?
I do not.
Any idea of your own knowledge whether that knife was sent anywhere to be tested for blood, DNA, anything like that?
I believe the same thing. We would have to check the lab reports, but I don't believe so.
Show you this one right here. Same question for that knife. Any idea if that one was around in 83?
Do not know.
Okay. Any idea of your own knowledge whether it was tested or anything for DNA, blood, hairs, fibers, anything?
Again, I don't believe so. We'd have to check the lab reports.
All right. Take a look at that. This is the Barlow knife from, I think, the truck. Again, any idea when that was manufactured?
No, sir.
Any idea if it was around in 83?
No, sir.
Show you, this is the drawer that you were talking about. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Was that in the kitchen?
It was.
Okay. And there are quite a few other items in there besides knives. Is that correct?
That is correct.
There's looks like a potato masher and an egg beater and several other things.
Yes, sir.
And this knife right here that was pulled, I guess, was that pulled out of that drawer?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, that knife in particular, any idea whether it was around in 83?
No, sir.
Any idea of your own knowledge whether that knife was tested for any kind of trace evidence, DNA, anything?
I don't believe so, but we would have to check the reports.
This looks like a little bit closer up photograph of some of those knives in the drawer. If you look at that for me, several of these knives, in fact, quite a few of them, appear to have serrated edges, kind of like steak knives. Is that correct?
I believe so. Let me look at the...
Let's go ahead and get these out. Go through some of these. And before we go through these, any of these knives jump out at you as being strange, weird, unusual to have in a kitchen?
Not in particular.
Okay. And we've got, it's like a butcher's knife. Again, kind of a fillet knife, a kind of broken knife. A couple of serrated steak knives that look kind of like what those are. Several other knives here, look like maybe a bread knife with some serrations, some bigger kitchen knives. Looks like several more serrated steak knives. Goodness gracious. A couple more steak knives and some sort of paring knife. I'm not sure what that one is. I don't have one like that in my kitchen. Let's see. Looks like maybe another bread knife, kitchen knife, and quite a rusty one. There. A couple more smaller, kind of fillet knives maybe. Another couple of serrated steak knives. butter knife. Okay. I'm not quite sure what that one is. It's called a Chef's Delight, but it does not have a point on it, so that would be kind of hard for stabbing, is that right? Something would be kind of tough. Got a couple more larger kitchen knives. Put this one inside. A large, I'm not quite sure what that one's for. Small knife, another butter knife, and another serrated steak knife. Does that look like what we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Now that looks like a meat cleaver. Pretty old and rusty, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Drop everything. Couple more serrated blades. Couple of more large chef's knives, it looks like. And a couple of more serrated blades. Does that look like what we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Another butcher's knife. Small, maybe paring knife. Another small paring knife. Serrated steak knife. This appears to be a very rusty, large kitchen knife. Cheese knife. Paring knife. Another paring knife. Tell me if I'm wrong. You see something different? And down at the bottom, it looks like we got down to the smaller serrated steak knives. Is that right? Looks like it.
Yes, sir.
So, as far as you know, your knowledge, do you have any idea when any of these knives were manufactured?
No, sir.
Any idea if they were in existence back in 1983?
Yes, sir.
Did they have any connection to this case other than they were in Mr. Gebhardt's kitchen, as far as you know?
Actually, yes. In fact, one of the knives looks extremely similar to one that we pulled from the well after we excavated it.
Okay. So one of these knives looks similar to a knife that was in the well?
Yes, sir.
Is it this kind of knife?
Similar. In fact, the same markings, the stainless,
It says stainless Japan,
made in Japan.
stainless steel Japan. It has a serrated edge.
There's one I believe we had that was not serrated.
But none of these can be said to be the murder weapon. Is that correct?
I don't know.
None of these, as far as you know. Just a second. And a lot of these knives, the 60 knives over here, all those are found in a kitchen drawer, correct?
Yes.
And all those knives to be used for kitchen, cutting fruit, cutting meat, other things besides hurting someone, correct?
It can be used for either, yes.
All questions I have.
Nothing further for this witness.
Yeah, you may come down. Thank you. Call your next witness, please.
I'm going to approach 3.
Yes.
and loosen the soil, and then we use a vacuum system to remove the slurry from the ground as we go deeper.
Okay. Typically, what are hydrovac services used for?
Mainly for finding utilities. If you're going through and they're putting a new water main down Main Street here, we'll get out in front of the contractor and we'll expose all the utilities in the ground. So when they're digging, the water that we use will not cut their lines, any gas mains, water mains, power lines, all that stuff. So it's not very invasive, basically.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibits number 81, 82, 83, 96, and 97. I should take a look at those photos. So those fairly and accurately depict the hydrovac apparatus.
Yes, sir.
Now, this time we will tender States Exhibits number 81, 82, 83, 96, and 97.
No objection, Your Honor.
You don't remember publish.
Yes, ma'am, they're admitted. You may.
Mr. Dubin, is that the hydrovac truck or apparatus?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The front of the truck right here is, what is that, sir?
That's our suction nozzle system.
Okay. Can we explain how that works?
It's basically a very large shop vac is the easiest way to explain it, but it's driven by the engine of the actual truck.
And as high-pressure water and this suction system is used and a slurry is made and sucked up, where does that slurry go to?
It goes into that tank right there on the back of the truck.
Now, April 12th of this year, or prior to April 12th, were you contacted by the District Attorney's Office in regards to conducting an excavation of a well here in Spalding County?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And on April 12th of this year, did you in fact come to Spalding County to the area of 1704 Patterson Road and excavate a well at that residence?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Prior to coming to 1704 Patterson Road, did the DA's office ask that the tank on the hydrovac apparatus be cleaned out?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you in fact ensure that that occurred?
Yes, I had my crew coming early on that morning to ensure there was no debris in the tank from the previous day.
And State's Exhibit number 83, Mr. Dubin, does that show the cleaned out tank?
Yes, sir.
And State's Exhibit number 96, Mr. Dubin, what does that show?
That shows the suction nozzle that was on the front of the truck being used to vacuum excavate the well.
State's Exhibit number 97, does that show the high pressure water system?
Yes, sir. It is that. It's that narrow tube next to it.
So basically, it's a pressure washer and a shop vac, and it creates a slurry and all the material sucked up into the tank of the truck, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was this the first time that your company has ever been used in a criminal case that you're aware of?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all my questions for this week.
My name is Scott Johnston. I represent Mr. Gebhardt in this case. You said this is the first time y'all, that you know of, that y'all have been used in something like this, in a criminal case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So your guys are trained in how to use that machine and how to do hydro excavation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your guys aren't trained in any kind of preserving evidence or keeping up with any of that kind of stuff?
No, sir.
I wouldn't expect them to be. You and Mr. Coker used the term slurry. I guess I'm kind of trying to get a picture of how this works. So it starts out, it's solid dirt and whatever's under the dirt or in the dirt. And so the high pressure water gets shot there, basically turns it into mud.
Correct.
And then that gets sucked up with the shot vac.
Yes, sir.
And so does anything that's small enough, I guess, to fit in the hose get sucked up with the mud and go into the tank?
Yes, sir.
And then just anything that's too big would still be down there, is that right?
With our system, we can basically latch on to something that's too large and bring it up.
And kind of like using your vacuum at home to grab something and pick it up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just a second. Nothing else, Mr. Dubin?
Just a few, Judge. Mr. Dubin, at this excavation at 1704 Patterson Road, someone actually went down in the well with the high-pressure water nozzle and the suction device, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they were able to actually reach to the bottom of the well.
Correct.
And suck up all the contents of the well.
Yes, sir.
So,
Anything else? You're free to go. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let's call your next witness, please.
Daniela Stewart.
You'll raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the trial of this case should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
If you'll have a seat. Please state your name for the record.
Daniela Stewart.
Agent Stewart, where do you work?
I work for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which is also the GBI for short.
And what do you do there?
I'm assigned as a special agent, and specifically in my office, I'm assigned as a crime scene specialist, which means that when we are working a case, I am the person who works the crime scene specifically.
And tell the jury what that means. What are you looking for?
So, contrary to popular shows on TV like CSI, crime scene investigating is more than just taking photographs and collecting evidence. Part of my job is to get to the crime scene, determine what items are of value, and try to analyze those items in relation to what I'm finding or what our investigators are relaying to me while I'm working the crime scene.
Okay. Tell them a little bit about your background. Where'd you go to school? What type of training you have?
So I have a bachelor's degree in sociology from Wake Forest University in North Carolina. I have a master's degree in criminal justice from Georgia State University. And prior to working for the GBI, I worked for the Atlanta Police Department for about 2 years as a crime scene technician, but I was not a sworn police officer at that time. So we pretty much do the same thing, we just weren't wearing guns. I also worked for the DeKalb County Police Department for about 4 months before I came over to the GBI, and I was also serving in a crime scene role as well.
So it seems like most of your career you've been in crime scene.
Yes, the majority of my career I have been working crime scene.
And how many crime scenes have you had the occasion to analyze?
Wow, a lot. Atlanta was a very busy city, as you can imagine. So I would say, just off the record, I can remember most of the shootings I've worked, which was probably about 50 in Atlanta, that I worked primary on, and then I also assisted as well, too. So probably over 100, I would say, easily.
Okay. And have you had the occasion to work homicides? I know you said shootings, but to clarify, those are
yes.
homicides.
Yes, I've worked stabbings, homicides, aggravated assaults where people are severely injured but they don't die. In Atlanta, you pretty much work everything, and with the GBI, we work a lot of different types of investigations as well. So I've had a large variety of crime scene work.
Now, was there a time where when you started with the GBI, where you were an agent, just a field agent, for when you were transitioning into crime scene?
Yes. So initially when I got hired with the GBI, I started off as a field agent. So every office has field agents and they have crime scene specialists. So I started off, of course, in the field agent capacity, which meant that I was working cases, and then I transitioned over into crime scene because one of our crime scene specialists was leaving. And because my background is in crime scene and I really love it, I switched over into crime scene.
How much training do you have under your belt there?
So when you get hired on with the GBI, well, prior to that, you have to be a sworn law enforcement officer. So you go through the police academy, which is about 11 weeks, and then when you get hired by the GBI, you go through GBI's training academy. So that's like another 11 weeks of specialized training, specialized investigating techniques, different things like that. We have a week of crime scene in there as well. I am also a graduate of the National Forensic Academy. It's in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's also referred to as the Body Farm. That is another 10-week academy that I've been through. It's over 400 hours of training where we investigate and we learn how to analyze different types of evidence, latent fingerprint processing techniques. We learn how to analyze the time since death of the bodies. We bury a body, we dig up a body. We do shooting reconstruction, blood stain pattern analysis, pretty much everything. It's like a forensic academy.
Okay. Now, you were assigned this case as a field agent initially.
My field trainer was assigned this case, and I was working with him on the case. So
And who was that?
Robert Devane.
Do you know, or can you tell the jury how the GBI assigns cold cases to agents?
So we, in our office, there's about 8 of us agents. You get assigned different counties. So our office covers 13 counties. So each agent will be assigned either 2 or 3 counties, and then that's how the cases get divided up, based on what crimes happened in your county. The cold cases get assigned to this county, and whoever the county agent is has that case.
When you and Agent Devane, who I understand is no longer...
Yes, he's no longer with us.
When you all were working this case initially, by this case I mean the Timothy Coggins cold case, what was the first thing that you did with that case?
So, coming from a crime scene background, when Robert asked me to look over the case, my first thought was, okay, let's try to find some evidence because, that's my background. So that was the first thing we did. We tried to find any existing evidence, and we also tried to locate any people that were still alive that we could possibly interview who would have more information for us.
Did you find any evidence?
We did find some evidence. We also found that some of it was missing or was no longer there.
Okay, what did you find?
I believe I went to the Spalding County Sheriff's Office and we located a box that had a rock, some of the victim's clothing, and a sheet.
Okay, and that's all you could find?
That was all that we could find.
Where did you find it? How did you locate these 2 items or 3 items of evidence?
So they have a crime scene person, the Spalding County Sheriff's Office does. Her name was, at that time, it was Julie Gates. So we met with Julie. At that time, she managed the evidence room. So we met with her. She took us to where the item would be located in the evidence room, and we opened the box and tried to find what was in there.
Okay, and did you look through with Julie, the rest of the evidence room trying to find evidence?
Yes, we did. Once we realized that some of it was not there, we started to look through some of the other shelves to see if maybe a box had been misplaced or something of that nature.
And you couldn't find anything?
We could not find anything else.
What about at the GBI?
I did speak to Jim Sebastian, who at that time was the assistant manager in the forensic biology section, and I also spoke to Michael McCarriger, who I believe is one of the assistant managers in the trace evidence section, to see if maybe the GBI still had some of the items. And what they told me was that we did not. Back in, 2000, the crime lab released some of the evidence back to the local investigators, and that if anything was left, it would be with the Spalding County Sheriff's Office.
And so at this point, did you consider the evidence just to be gone?
I did.
Okay. You said your background was evidence. Did that stop you from investigating this cold case?
No, it did not. Just because you can't find certain pieces of evidence doesn't mean that that's a dead end.
Okay. And explain to the jury why not.
Because not all cases are going to be solved based on the physical evidence. There are some cases where the physical evidence doesn't tell you exactly what happened. You may be missing certain pieces, or for example, in Atlanta we had drive-by shootings a lot. Just because we roll up to a crime scene and we find 10 casings on the ground, that doesn't really put a gun in somebody's hand. Does that make sense? So we know that maybe 10 shots were fired, but we still have to answer the question of who fired them and when, and what were the circumstances surrounding that. And a lot of that information is gained through your actual investigation, where the lead agent or the lead investigators knocking on doors, talking to people, gathering information.
So witness interviews and testimony?
Correct.
Okay. So is that one of the main reasons that you didn't find this case to be at a dead end? That you felt like you could use other investigative techniques
Yes.
to bring this case to a jury?
Yes.
So when you went into crime scene, did you lose involvement with this case?
The case was reassigned once I transitioned out of the field agent role. I transitioned over to crime scene, and so therefore Spalding was no longer one of my counties, because as crime scene we cover all 13 counties, whereas the field agents, they're assigned specific counties. So it was transferred to a different agent.
Do you know who it was transferred to?
Yes.
Who was that?
Jared Coleman.
Okay. And did Agent Coleman ask you to assist in a crime scene capacity during this investigation?
Yes.
Specifically, what did you do?
So basically, Jared was gathering information and trying to generate new leads, and one of those was to serve a search warrant at a residence. So
Whose residence was that?
I can't remember specifically. I believe it was Frankie Gebhardt's. Yes.
Okay.
But Jared and the other agents in our office will often ask us as crime scene to help assist them with serving some type of search warrant or collecting items, because our area of expertise is crime scene evidence collection. So who better to ask than your crime scene person? So we went out there to the residence, and we dug up a well, or excavated a well for better terminology, and we were able to locate some items inside of the well.
Did you know what you were looking for?
I did not know specifically what we were looking for. I knew that while I was in training at the NFA, my office had executed a search warrant, and they had found knives and some other things. So I guess we were looking for more of that same type of evidence. But I was not privy to that first search warrant because I was in training in Tennessee.
Okay. When you arrived on a scene, in this case, I believe it was 1704 Patterson Road?
Yes.
Okay. And when you arrive on a scene, what do you do? What's the first thing that you do?
So the first thing that we do is we take photographs. We always want to take photographs of the scene the way that we see it before we do anything to it, just so that we can show this is exactly how it was when we found it. So that's one of the first things that we do.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been marked as, and some pictures have been removed, so I'm going to have to go through them.
Okay.
I think these were Christie's. Starting with 78, 79, 80. Do you recognize those?
Yes.
What are those?
These are overall photographs of the residence.
Okay, and are they fair and accurate depictions?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'll tender 78, 79, and 80.
Admitted.
Okay, I'm also going to show you, let's turn them over. State's Exhibit 84. $395. And after you look at them, let me know if you recognize them.
Yes.
And how do you recognize them?
These are photographs of the hydrovac machine that was used to assist in excavating the well.
Fair, and are they fair and accurate depictions?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I will tender those photos.
Admitted.
I'll show you State's Exhibits 98 through 144. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And are they fair and accurate depictions of what you saw on the day that you executed the search warrant at 1704 Patterson?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this time I will tender 98 through 144.
Admitted.
So the entire point of going out again to 1704 Patterson Road was what? To go out there a second time, what was the point of that?
To retrieve additional evidence.
And where was that evidence supposedly located?
It was supposedly located in a well.
All right. And what was the method of excavation? Was it the traditional method of excavation for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
No, it was not.
What is the traditional method of excavation?
Typically, in a case like this where you have to excavate a well, you have to dig, and for every foot you go down, you have to go out so many feet. And in order to do that method, we would have had to destroy some of the property, which we were trying not to do. We try, even though we have a search warrant and we're legally authorized to obtain the evidence with whatever means we see fit, we try not to destroy people's property as best we can.
As far as the evidentiary value of what may be on the property, I'm asking about trace evidence, anything that might have been down in that well. Could that have been affected by the fact that it had been in a well?
Yeah, it could have.
Okay. And were you aware that the method of excavation that was chosen could also have affected the evidentiary value of the items, if there were any items, the evidentiary value of items that were beneath the well?
Yes.
Okay. So you knew that going in?
Yes.
That it could?
Yes, that it could.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 80. You need to step down, may she, Judge?
Yes.
Can you see it or you need to step down?
I can see it.
Okay. What is the jury looking at here?
This is the area where the well was, supposedly.
Okay. And I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 63. And does it appear to you from State's Exhibit 63 to State's Exhibit 80 that something had been placed in the well on top of it?
Oh, you mean in terms of the leaves?
Yes, had it been filled in a bit more?
Yes.
Okay. When the truck, the truck from Hydrovac came in, what was an important thing to do with the inside of the truck?
So when the truck came in, it was Special Agent Freilich and I were the two crime scene specialists out there. So Agent Freilich climbed into the truck to make sure that it was free of any debris from a from any prior work that they had done. We always try to make sure that whatever equipment we're using is sanitary so that we're not contaminating the items that we then collect.
And you were present for this also?
I was.
And was there anything in the truck itself, that's State's Exhibit 84 and State's Exhibit 85,
To my knowledge, there was not.
and State's Exhibit 87?
No.
So can you kind of explain to the jury what the process was? I mean, what were these guys doing to get in this well? And I'm showing to the jury State's Exhibit 92.
So basically, the Hydrovac was like a souped-up power washer and vacuum cleaner all in one. So they would go down so many feet, apply the water to the items inside of the well so that they could actually loosen up the dirt and everything that was in there so that they would be able to then suck it back into the machine.
Okay. What are the things that you were looking for at the time? Were you looking for trash?
One of the things we were looking for, based on the previous items that were recovered from the previous search warrant, was a knife.
Okay. And did you expect trash to be in the well based on prior statements?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay. State's Exhibit 93, is this in, what is this a photo of?
That's a photo of, we try to photograph the process by which we are collecting the evidence, especially in a situation like this where it's going to take a while to get the items out. We try to photograph the process.
Okay. State's Exhibit 94.
That's just, another photograph of showing our process.
State's Exhibit 99.
Is that? Okay, this is the hydrovac tube.
You can stay there because I'm asking you.
Okay.
State's Exhibit 102. Basically, out there on the scene, did you have somebody photographing inside the well so the process could be captured for the jury?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And, excuse me, next to the hydrovac tube, what is this that we're looking at here with the orange part at the end?
So, of course, this, like she said, this is the tube, but then this is the souped up power washer, essentially.
Okay.
Where the water's coming
So
out.
this is the water.
Yes.
And so you can kind of see the process happening here. Now, there wasn't trash at this point in the well.
I don't remember there being trash at this point.
Okay. State Exhibit 105. What's the jury looking at here?
So this is a picture inside of the well, and we're actually starting to see items of trash.
Okay, so you're a good bit of the ways down there.
Yes.
Okay. At one point, once the hydrovac crew was pretty far deep in the well, did there come a point where there were items that were large and the hydrovac tube could not set these items in anymore?
Yes, there got to a point where they got deeper down into the well where the water and the suction just were not going to be enough.
Okay. What was the plan at that point?
So the plan was to see if somebody could actually go down inside of the well and loosen up some of the items.
Okay, and who did you all have to contact to make that happen?
Well, we spoke to the hydrovac guys that were on scene.
Okay, but did you also have to contact the fire department?
Yes, we did contact the fire department because we had to make sure that it would be safe for somebody to go down there and that the well wasn't just going to cave in on somebody. We wouldn't want to send somebody down there if that was going to happen. So we had to make sure that it was safe to do that.
Okay. State's Exhibit 106. What's the jury looking at here?
This is one of the hydrovac workers going down inside of the well and strapped to a harness.
State's Exhibit 108.
That is, I believe that's him inside trying to guide the tube while he's down in the well.
Fair to say he's pretty deep
Yes.
in there. Okay. Now, when he was down in the well, what was he doing? Or was he bringing items to the surface? Was he trying to fish them up? What was he doing?
I believe he actually had the hose down there, and he was actually trying to loosen up some of the items and then trying to basically just make it easier for them to come up through the tube. He wasn't bringing items up.
Did he also have a bucket?
Yes, he did have a bucket.
And what was he doing with large items that wouldn't go up the tube?
So any large items that were not able to make it through the tube, he was putting them in the bucket, and then we were collecting the bucket from him and photographing those items.
Had the sheriff's office created a site, a dump site, if you will?
Yes, they had.
Where was that?
It was behind the Spalding County Jail.
Okay. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But were there items collected from the buckets that this individual was bringing up?
Yes, so as the items from the bucket were coming up, we were photographing them and we were collecting them,
Okay.
separate from the items that were in.
State's Exhibit 112. Were these some of the items that came up in the bucket?
Yes, these were some of the items that came up in the bucket.
One of the items that came up in a bucket, I'm going to show you, is marked as State's Exhibit 145. Do you recognize that?
Yeah, I recognize the box and the writing on the box. It's my handwriting.
Okay, I want to sit down. Did you collect this?
I did.
All right. And did you seal it?
I did.
Your Honor, at this time I will tender State's Exhibit 145.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Is that what came up in one of the buckets?
Yes, it is.
And that was at the bottom of the well?
I can't remember specifically. It wasn't at the top, that's for sure.
And what did you label this as?
I think sections of a metal chain, because there were two portions of it.
Okay. Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 146. Do you recognize it?
I do.
Okay, what is it?
This is a box containing what I wrote is a dark in color sock.
Okay, and did you collect it?
I did.
All right, and did you label it?
I did.
All right. Your Honor, at this time I'll tender State's Exhibit 146.
No objection.
It's admitted.
As you were the agent who had the case first, we were looking for evidence. Did you know if the victim was wearing socks at the scene?
I believe that all he had at the scene was on his body were jeans
Okay.
and underwear.
And underwear?
Yes.
Do you recall any other items of clothing recovered from this scene?
I remember that there was a sweater that was recovered.
And that was one of the items that was lost?
Yes.
Okay. Were any shoes at the scene?
No.
So no shoes, no socks?
No.
to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 147 and 148. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Are those? Okay.
Yes, I remember.
When did you collect those?
These were collected the same day that we did the hydrovac.
Okay, so these would have come up in the bucket?
Yes.
All right. Because, explain to the jury when you actually went through all the evidence that came out of the tank.
So we went through the evidence that came out of the tank the next day.
Okay, so this was evidence that you photographed and you took pictures of at the home, at 1704 Patterson, the defendant's home?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I'll tender 147 and 148.
No objection, Your Honor.
Admitted.
Why did you collect this Arby's sauce packet?
Well, once we were getting deeper down into the well, we started seeing things that we believed were from the 1980s, and we collected the Arby's sauce packet because we thought that we could get a date off of it.
Were you ever able to do that?
No.
Okay. And 148, that's a fiber. It says on here, fiber from the chain. Why did you collect that?
As we were packaging up the chain, I saw a very small reddish orange fiber, and it was believed at some point that maybe some of the victim's clothing was red or something of that nature. So I thought it best to preserve that.
Were you ever able to have it tested?
No, I wasn't.
In fact, all of this evidence from the well, would the GBI crime lab accept it for testing?
I remember submitting the items, and I don't remember if all of the items were tested.
Okay. Okay. State's Exhibit 115. What is the jury looking at here?
So as we mentioned before, there was an off-site location, and this was the same day that we did the excavation. This was at the end when we were done excavating the well. The hydrovac machine went to that off-site location and dumped everything out onto a tarp.
And were you present for that?
I was.
What was that like? Explain that to us. What were you looking at there?
Basically, when the truck lifted up, everything just kind of came out
Okay.
all at once.
Just dump out?
Yes, everything just sucked out.
What was the reason for the area looking like this? The tarp, having the walls? I mean, what was all of that for?
We wanted to try to keep everything contained in an area. So if we hadn't put up the walls, some of the water and some of the items could have been washed away. So we were trying to prevent that as much as possible.
Okay, and were you able to prevent anything from getting outside of that area?
Yes, we were very successful with that.
Was this the first time you'd ever seen a well excavation like this?
Yes, this was the very first time.
Okay. State's Exhibit 118. What was about to happen here?
So they were backing the truck up, and we're getting ready to open the hydrovac.
Okay. State's Exhibit 120.
They were starting to open the hydrovac.
Okay. State's Exhibit 121. What are they looking at here?
So this is after the hydrovac has been opened, and some of the items are actually starting to come out of the tank.
Okay. State's Exhibit 122.
That's, again, after it's been opened and items have been deposited onto the tarp from the tank.
Was there something that was noticed pretty soon after everything was dumped?
Yes, as things were being dumped out, we did notice that there was a shoe.
And what was unusual about the shoe?
The shoe appeared that it had been burned.
Okay. And why did you consider that to be something of evidentiary value?
Because based on our knowledge throughout the investigation was that things had been thrown down the well and burned.
Okay. State's Exhibit 133. What was that?
An Adidas tennis shoe.
Okay. So the next day, you go back out to the sheriff's office,
Yes.
and you are given the task, you and other agents, of sorting through what came out of the well.
Yes.
What would you describe that? What was most of what came out of the well?
Most of what came out of the well was trash.
Trash.
Yes, most of it.
State's Exhibit 126. Is that what you were sorting through?
Yes, that is what we sorted through. We had sifters out there as well so that we wouldn't miss any small pieces of evidence.
Now, were you able to recover items of evidence that you considered to be significant in this investigation?
Yes, we were able to recover shoes and clothing as well.
Okay. State's Exhibit 127. Are these the items that you consider to be of evidentiary value in this case?
Yes, so we laid out some paper, and so of course the items are very wet at this point because they've just been soaked with the hydrovac. So we had to lay out some paper so that they could dry out properly.
State's Exhibit 130. What is the jury looking at here?
So this is a photograph of what we assume was a white, it was somewhat dingy, but a tank top style shirt, men's.
Okay. And why did you collect that? What was significant to you about that?
Well, we knew from our crime scene photographs that we didn't have any clothing from the victim, no upper clothing anyway. We knew we had the jeans and his underwear, but we didn't have any upper clothing and we didn't have shoes and socks.
Okay.
So,
You did have, you mentioned earlier, a sweater.
yes, well, that was recovered originally at the crime scene, but since then we were not privy to that item.
So what you're saying is that you didn't have an undershirt, socks, or shoes.
Correct.
Did you recover anything else from the well?
Yes, we did. We actually found a wooden handle of a knife and a couple of blades.
Okay. I'm going to start with over here what's previously been identified as State's Exhibit 7. And we opened it in court. Okay. I'm going to ask you if you recognize that.
Yes.
Okay. And what are those?
That is the shoe and the sole.
Okay. Did you collect it?
Yes.
And these are your initials?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, I'll tender at this time State's Exhibit 7. Indicated that these shoes were burned. Can you show the jury where that is?
Yes, so here at the heel, you can see that some of the fabric appears to be melted, and this also appears to be disfigured in comparison to the rest of it.
Now, were you able to determine the size of the shoe?
Yes, so it's somewhat faded, but you can see that there's a 10 here on the bottom of the shoe.
So these are a size 10?
Yes.
Okay. Did you find what appeared to be a matching sole to that shoe?
Yes, this appears to be the matching insole. So if you look on the bottom of the insole, there are these circular, like a circular pattern, and on the inside of the shoe, you have that similar circular pattern.
And what is evident on this shoe? What happened to the rest of the shoe, I should say?
Well, it appears that this also, near the heel area, appears to be somewhat burned and disfigured in comparison to the rest of it, similar to the shoe.
going to show you State's Exhibit 149. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
Okay. How do you recognize it?
This is my handwriting on the bag. It says, red and colored stock.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I will tender 149.
No objection.
It's admitted.
State's Exhibit 1. I'm going to show you what we marked as State's Exhibit 151. Do you recognize that?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
It's my handwriting on the bag, and it says, chain, with multiple links.
Okay. So this was actually found when everything was dumped?
Yes, it was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your Honor, this time I'll tender 151.
No objection, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
State's Exhibit 152. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
It's my handwriting on the bag. It says white shirt with holes.
Okay. Did you package it?
I did.
And is that what's photographed there?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, this time I will tender 152.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Now, is it fair to say from the time that it was recovered, it began to very quickly become effective by the air?
Yes.
Okay. What was happening to it?
Well, oddly enough, being down in a well for so long, it somewhat had been preserved by being compacted in the well. Once it gets exposed to air, then the fabric becomes really fragile and starts to kind of deteriorate.
Now, what were you able to notice about this shirt?
So there were several what we call defects, which a defect is really just an imperfection in the surface. Depending on the case, they could be bullet defects or knife defects or what have you, just depending on the case. But these defects were mostly linear, and there was also sections of the shirt that appeared to also be burnt and have some type of melted fabric on them.
Okay. Here,
Yes.
those appear to be defects as well.
Yes, so the thing to note with this is, like I said, defects are just imperfections, but these defects look different than these linear defects. These look more like tearing or something happening to the fabric, whereas down here you have very, very straight linear marks in the shirt.
And I'm going to ask you to speak up a little bit. I think it's a little difficult for the
Oh.
defense team to hear over here.
I'm sorry. But what I was saying was the defects that are here are different in shape than what's up here. So down here is more linear, and here looks more consistent with maybe tearing or something of that nature.
Could that occur by dragging?
It could occur by dragging, yes.
Do you see a similar defect on this side of the shirt?
So, yeah, back here is the same type of tearing that you have on the front of the shirt.
Now, the linear defects, what, in your experience, are those caused by?
Typically, in my experience, linear defects usually come from some type of knife,
Okay.
in my experience.
Now, you might have already said this, but if you have, I apologize. Did this shirt also show signs of being burned?
Yeah, so
And how do you know that?
Here on the front, you can see the darkening color, and then it appears that there's some type of fabric almost melted onto the shirt. It's kind of hard to tell at this point, but when we collected it, it was a little bit more clear because the shirt was in better condition.
I'm showing you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 150. Do you recognize it?
Yes,
Okay, what is it?
this is the box containing the wood knife handle and the partial blades.
Okay, and make sure you speak up.
Yes,
Did you collect it?
I did.
All right. And these are your initials?
Yes, my initials are on the box.
Your Honor, at this time I'll tender State's Exhibit 150.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Now, how many knives did you find in the well? Or was work, not you personally, but work out in the well?
I just recall finding the one handle and the two blades. I don't recall any of it.
Now, what is the jury looking at here?
This is a partial blade to a stainless steel knife, and it says stainless steel right there on it. It's hard for you guys to see because it's so small, but it says stainless steel on the blade.
And is it a straight edge or a serrated knife?
It's a straight edge.
Is it
Your Honor, I'm
central?
going to object at this point. There's only a part of the blade. I don't believe they can state the entire blade is serrated or not, just that portion is not.
If you'll rephrase the question.
Oh, well, the part that you are holding,
Yes.
is it straight edge or serrated?
The part that I'm holding is straight edge.
Okay. And were you able to determine anything about this portion here and this handle?
It's difficult to say whether it specifically fits in here, but they are very similar in size.
You did find another blade. Now, did this blade appear to match this blade? And speaking of the smaller of the two blades.
It's difficult to say whether they actually go together.
That's not something you would be comfortable
No,
testifying to?
I'm not an expert in fracture matching. We have a section that does fracture matching, but other than both appearing to be stainless steel, it's difficult to say whether they actually go together.
The well at 1704 Patterson Road, is that in Spalding County? It was. Now, you also collected some, what you've labeled miscellaneous items, clothing, fabric. Why did you collect all of that?
Because anything that we pull out of the well that was clothing related would be potentially of evidentiary value. We're not just going to overlook the items. We try to collect as much as possible.
State's Exhibit 153. Do you recognize it?
I do.
And how do you recognize it?
I packaged this item and it's my handwriting on the box.
I'll tender it this time.
No objection.
It's admitted.
What did this appear to be?
That appeared to be some type of sheet.
Okay. And what are we looking at here?
There were other types of clothing, such as shirts, and I believe we also found a pair of pants in there.
The shirts, were they female?
Some of them appeared to be female. I believe there was probably a kid's clothing item in there as well.
In this shirt? Did you see any of the defects that you saw on this one?
I did not see the same type of defects on that shirt.
Did you also find what appeared to be men's work pants?
Yes.
And I believe these other items were random cloth items in another sheet.
Yes.
All right, that's all I have for this witness.
You may cross. We'll take, if any of the jurors need a break at this time, we'll take a short break, or at least 5 minutes, if you'll report to the jury room, please. We may be past the point of brandishing a lot of the evidence, but I just want the attorneys to be a little careful. I think some of the jurors have recoiled, especially on the front row, with maybe some of the dust that's shown up. I was getting some facial expressions of maybe concern from one or two of the jurors. So I just, maybe if it's being pulled freshly out of a box, maybe step back a step or two from the jury until the dust settles, so to speak.
I understand, that's why I needed a break, Judge.
Okay, I think that's why the jurors needed a break too. We did. We can bring them in, Mr. Jim. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may cross-examine.
Good afternoon, Ms. Stewart.
Good afternoon.
My name is Scott Johnston. I represent Mr. Gebhardt. I just wanted to go over a few things with you. I wanted to start out with you. One of your initial things you tried to do in this case was to find some of the evidence. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And we went over that some of the evidence was missing, but I'd like to go over a little more with you some of the things that went missing. Did you know, or do you know that there was a plaster cast of a tire impression that was included as part of the evidence?
Yeah, I do remember reading something about that.
Okay. And I think you stated earlier that there was the sweater or long sleeve shirt, or there was an item of clothing from the victim that originally was in the evidence, but you didn't have access to now.
Correct.
Do you know, or did you know that there were several soil samples from the crime scene that had suspected blood stains?
I do remember reading something about soil samples.
And those were not anything you were able to find?
No.
Do you recall reading that there was I guess for lack of a better term, a wooden club or a homemade type club?
It was some type of like wooden chair leg or something wooden, yes.
And when you went to search for that, you were not able to find that, is that correct?
No, I was not.
Also, there was, did you know that there was an empty Jack Daniels bottle?
Yes, I do remember reading something about a bottle.
And when you went to look for the evidence, you were not able to locate that item, is that correct?
I was not.
Some of these items made it to the crime lab, or the majority of these items made it to the crime lab. And do you recall reading that there was a Caucasian head hair recovered from the sweater?
I do remember reading that there were hairs recovered from some of the items, yes.
And that there was a gray Caucasian head hair recovered from the jeans or the sheet that came in with the victim?
Yes, I do remember reading there were hairs recovered.
Okay. Now, let's see. You described the kind of the process of the hydrovac as a power washer and a vacuum together.
Yes.
Okay, so it's shooting out pretty high-pressure water. And
Yes.
sucking everything up, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And was there quite a bit of, I guess for lack of a better term, trash that came out of that well?
Yes, there was.
I'm going to show you some photographs. I'm going to mark them as defense one. Let's see how many I've got here, and I'll figure out the numbers. We've got an even dozen. All right, it's going to be Defense Exhibit 1 through 12. So you'll take a look at those and see if you recognize those photographs.
Yes.
Okay. And besides that last one, which is a kind of a blow-up of a portion of the photo before it, did you actually take these photographs?
I did not take those photographs.
But you were present during the search,
Yes.
and you actually collected the evidence that most of these photographs were taken of, is that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would like to tender exhibits 1 through 12 for the defense.
They're admitted.
And I'd like to show these to Ms. Stewart. This first item here, is this an item that was recovered from the well?
Yes.
Okay. And you have any idea what that is?
No, it's, I'm assuming it was some kind of car part or something.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's a big hunk of metal.
Yes.
Okay. And I think you held these up earlier with Ms. Broder. Are these the work pants that were recovered?
Yes, those appear to be the work pants.
And defense 3, is that a piece of clothing that was also recovered?
Yes.
And defense 4, looks like maybe part of a t-shirt.
Yes.
Was that also recovered from the well?
Yes.
Defense exhibit number 5. Does that appear to be also some items? Maybe it looks like the bottom of a shovel, maybe the piece of metal we saw earlier, some of the items that were recovered from the well.
Yes.
Defendant 6. Does that appear to be, looks like an axe head?
Yeah, it appears to be an axe head.
Is that something also that was recovered from the well?
I don't recall if that specifically was recovered from the well. I don't remember seeing that.
Let's see. What about State's exhibit, defendant's exhibit number 7?
Yes.
That appears to be a pulley of some sort. Is that something that was recovered from the well?
Yes.
Again, another picture of defense number 8. Does that appear to be some glass bottles and some other items of just, for lack of a better term, trash that
Yes.
were recovered from the well?
Yes.
Number 9. That for a moment, it appears to have some car parts or other items, but kind of show you the middle here. Is this the chain that that was recovered here?
If I may step down.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
That appears to be the chain.
Okay. And it is included with quite a bit of other metal items, car parts, things like that.
Yes.
Show you exhibit number 10. Again, are those items that came from the weapon?
Yes.
Now, we'll show you a photo. It's exhibit number 11. Is that a photo of the knife handle and part of a blade that was recovered?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, in that photo, there's a penny right down near the bottom. Is that correct?
It appears to be a penny.
Right here?
Yes.
And if you could, this is a blow-up of that same penny, Defendant's 12. You may need to step down and take a look. See if you could look and see the date on that penny for us. I know it's kind of beat up.
Yeah. It's difficult to determine.
How about if I turn it the correct direction here? Does that penny appear to say 1989 to you?
There's a 9 and an 8 that I can see, but it's hard for me to tell.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that these two pieces of blade, that you could not say whether they came from the same knife. Is that correct?
Correct.
But there are some folks at the crime lab that could. Is that correct?
It's
Or
possible.
might be able to.
They might be able to, depending on the condition of the items.
And you said that those people do fracture matching.
Correct.
Okay. And you also said that the shirt, that when it first came out of the well, the air kind of started working on it and degrading it quicker. Is that right?
Correct.
That's lack of a better term?
Yes.
And you kind of actually said to Ms. Broder that, I guess, being down in the well kind of preserved it. Is that correct?
Yes, what I meant by that was that it somewhat preserved the integrity of the fabric, maybe not the items that are on the fabric in terms of DNA, hair, or fibers, because they're mixing with other items that are down there, but the overall condition of the fabric.
And all of these items, none of these, as far as you know, were tested at the crime lab for hairs, fibers, DNA, blood, any of those things.
I do not know if they were tested.
Now, this is one of the chains that was pulled out of the wheel. Is that correct? Different lengths of
Correct.
chain. What y'all were, do you know, or were you told why y'all were looking for a chain?
During the investigation, it was learned that a chain was used during the incident.
Do you have any personal knowledge as to whether this chain had anything to do with the murder of Timothy Cox?
It's difficult to say whether that specific chain did or not.
Same for the knife. Do you know of any testing, any expert opinion, any knowledge that you have that that piece of blade and that handle are the weapon that killed Timothy Cox?
I do not specifically have that knowledge.
Now, a lot of the garbage that came out of that well was burned, was it not? I mean, there was a layer, quite a bit of trash burned.
I don't recall seeing a lot of burned trash.
Let me ask you this, if items were burned, if trash was burned, could it have been burned to ash?
It could have, it's possible.
And add that to the fact that in this process, water was, of course, introduced to the system there, is that correct?
Yes, well, going into this, we knew that we were going to have to use water to retrieve some of the items.
And I showed you that picture, there was a pulley there, correct, in the
Correct.
well?
Yes,
And is that something that could have been used as part of the well itself, the pulley and the chain?
it's possible.
Let me ask you this, I know you said you'd worked in Atlanta and in DeKalb County. Have you ever had dealings with, I guess, what we call pulp wooders, folks who go out and cut down trees for a living?
No, not to my knowledge in DeKalb, no.
So you wouldn't have any idea whether that chain would be something somebody like that would keep around for their job?
I mean, it's possible.
I think that's all I have now.
Can you redirect?
Yes, Judge, briefly. Just so the jury understands, the knife, the penny, all the trash, everything that was photographed out there at the sheriff's office,
Yes,
that was all mixed up together,
yes,
right? And it was mixed up together in that tank.
yes,
So you can't testify to this jury when anything was placed in the well because it was all mixed together.
correct.
All right. And even the items that were found at the bottom of the well, the water very well may have pushed them down to the bottom.
Yes, that's possible.
So although the well was very deep, you aren't sitting there and telling this jury when any of these items were placed in the well.
No, I'm not.
Your job is just to make conclusions about the evidence that you have in front of them.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have.
You may come down and you're excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you call your next witness, please?
Captain Mike Morris.
You'll raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the trial of this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir, I do.
Have a seat.
There's
Please state your name for the record.
Mike Morris
Captain Morris, how are you employed?
with Spalding County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been with Spalding County Sheriff's Office?
Since January 1, 2017,
And prior to that, where were you employed?
Griffin Police Department.
And Captain Morris, have you ever had the occasion to investigate a cold case prior to this?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. And that was here in Spalding County, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How did you come to be assigned to the case involving the death of Timothy Coggins?
I was contacted by Agent Coleman as he was doing a cold case review, and he was investigating the case out of Spalding, so he contacted me because, of course, the case was active out of Spalding.
Okay. Were you able to locate the sheriff's office file regarding this case?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. Is it fair to say that you and Agent Coleman basically had to rebuild this case from the ground up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was this a joint investigation with the GBI?
Absolutely.
Okay. Much different than the investigation that occurred in 1983?
Most definitely.
Okay. And did you share information with Agent Coleman, and did Agent Coleman share information with you?
Yeah, actually, Agent Coleman and I worked together hand in hand through the entire investigation.
Okay. And during the numerous witness interviews and the collection of all this evidence, you and Agent Coleman and members of the Spalding County Sheriff's Office and members of the GBI were all present during that and worked collaboratively
That's
in
correct.
this investigation.
Yes, sir.
Now, you were, or were you aware about the missing evidence when you were assigned this case?
No, sir. When I was contacted by Agent Coleman and first learned about the case, that is the first time that, once I discovered that there was the missing evidence, that's the first I'd heard about it. I wasn't familiar with the case out of Spalding until Agent Coleman brought it to my attention.
Okay. And during the course of the investigation of the case, you learned about Christopher Vaughn and what he had indicated to the GBI and to law enforcement in previous years, correct?
Yes, sir.
And was a decision made to bring Mr. Vaughn back from the state prison system to Spalding County?
There was.
Okay. And what was the purpose of bringing him back from the prison system?
To pair him with Mr. Gebhardt to see if we could not obtain additional information from Mr. Gebhardt.
Okay. And during that operation, was Mr. Vaughn fitted with a listening device?
Yes, sir, he was.
Okay. And was he placed in a cell with Frankie Gebhardt?
He was.
Okay. And did you, or were you and Agent Coleman listening during that conversation, or did you listen to the conversation of Mr. Vaughn and Mr. Gebhardt after the fact?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, Captain Morris, let me show you what's... 154. Captain Morris, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 154. Ask you to take a look at that. Are you familiar with that?
May I take it out of the wrapper? Yes, it is a CD recording of the listening operation in the jail cell.
Have you had an opportunity to listen to that recording?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And does that recording depict the voices of Christopher Vaughn and Franklin Gebhardt?
It does.
Are you familiar with their voices?
Yes, sir, I am.
At this time, I would tender State's Exhibit number 154.
Your Honor, defense would simply reserve our previous objections from the motions.
All right.
And ask that it be a continued objection.
All right, I'll grant that. It's admitted.
Now, we would ask to publish this recording. We do have a transcript of the recording that we would ask to tender as a demonstrative.
Okay. Has the defense had a chance to read the transcript?
They
Your
have.
Honor, we don't have an objection as long as it's
Okay.
later on with the
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, they're going to pass this transcript of this out so that you can read it and listen to it at the same time. However, after you hear it, we'll recollect the transcripts.
All right, I'd ask to tender the transcript of State's Exhibit number 155
Okay.
for demonstrative purposes.
All right. We'll allow that. Thank you. I think they need one more transcript in the back corner.
Captain Morris, this operation, again, occurred in a jail cell at the Spalding County Jail. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it was a holding cell in the booking area.
And due to it being a holding cell, it's kind of hard to hear the conversation.
Yes, sir, it echoes with the cinder block walls.
Okay.
Mr. Gebhardt at this time was not in custody on these charges, was he?
No, sir.
Because the recording is approximately an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the recording is approximately an hour and 20 minutes. If any of you need a break during this, get my attention or the attention of a bailiff, and we'll take a break at your convenience.